Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast.
We're so happy that you joined in on another episode. We're excited for this topic. So far, we've really been talking a lot about mentorship. And a lot of our episodes, we tend to focus a lot on parents because we work with a lot of parents, but we also work with a good amount of teachers. And education is one of the things that we love doing the most. We're researchers, we're professionals, but we're also educators at heart. So in this episode, we want to focus on how do you mentor kids in a classroom? How can a teacher be a better mentor? So my first question to start us off, Dr. Jacob, is in the current education system, teachers have so much on their plate, so much going on. Is it possible for teachers to be good mentors to the students in their class?
Oh, definitely. In fact, it's probably one of the only things that would make it worth it if I'm thinking of teaching. Only thing that would make it worth it to actually do it, because of the low pay, the overburden requirements, the continual constant worry of someone accusing you of something or whatnot, dealing with kids that, nowadays one person can say anything and now, your whole reputation's on the line. I mean, educators, because of how closely they deal with students, it is a really, it's really a tough job.
So not only is mentoring possible, but you're saying that mentoring is probably the most rewarding part of teaching.
Definitely.
So then let's get into it. You've got all of these worries on a teacher's plate. How could they mentor a student? Let's say they have a class of 30 kids and they have this whole curriculum they have to get through. How do you even incorporate mentoring?
Okay, so the first thing, if I'm a teacher, is you got to know you're a good teacher. And you got to know that there's not enough teachers to teach students at their age. So I'd take half of everything I'm doing and I'd throw it in the trash and not even worry about it. This will clear up time to do whatever I really want to do. And a lot of teachers, they spend so much time worrying about the requirements, whatnot, trying to teach every single thing in curriculum. But the reality of it is the standards and the regulations they put on what you have to teach, how well you got to teach, all these type of things. The reality of it is they're not even well defined. And when you really get down to it, there's so very few things you really have to get through in the classroom. Students are only learning so much, and they can only learn so much every day. And so minimizing all of the stuff, all of the stuff that's just there will give you time. But in regards to time, you're not going to be able to mentor everyone in your classroom. So that's the first thing to know is it's not like a family. In a family, the parents, you're actually genetically related to your children. So the likelihood that you're going to be able to mentor your children as long as they like you and they come to you and want to talk to you is very high. But you got a classroom full of students that's not genetically related to you and they're all really, really different. There's no shot in the world that you're going to be able to mentor all 30 students.
And some of the students might not even like you, no matter who you are or what you do.
It is true. Yeah. So the first thing to know is you can't try to mentor everybody because you're going to end up not being able to mentor anyone. Use your time wisely to find those students who naturally get along with you, naturally turn to you for advice and look to you as someone they really enjoy. And those are the students you spend time with. Because the number one rule of mentoring is no one wants to get mentored by you if you don't know who they are. Right? If you get to know who they are, they still might not want to be mentored by you. But if you don't know who they are, you don't even have a shot to begin with.
Yeah.
So the first thing you got to do is be wise in who you pick you want to try to mentor. And the first step is get to know them. You need to, you're dealing with a deficit because you don't know what it's like to be with this child at home. You don't know what they do at home. You don't know what they do, 2/3 of their day. And so you need to be able to pick that information up in the classroom. You have to be able to talk to them enough about multiple different things to get a feel for, okay, what is the student experiencing in life? When they go home, what's the home life like for this child? What's their sleeping pattern? Do they go to bed really late? Do they go to bed early? Are their parents strict? Are they really relaxed? All of these things you have to get to know. And so that's really the first step, is get to know the students that you want to help really, really well.
Yeah, I guess the first step is make the time, because it's worth it. And the second step would be really spend the time with those kids. And, I think that's really hard for teachers, because in order to spend the time, you have to be really creative with what you're doing in the classroom. You have to do things a little bit different. Maybe do some activities, right, where you actually get to talk with students and socialize with them a little bit more, or make yourself available a little bit more for students.
Yes, and it brings up a good point. You don't necessarily have to stay after class a lot or whatnot. If you make time in the classroom by activities or whatnot, you can actually gain a good relationship with multiple students just during class time, which is a real big benefit.
And that brings up another thing. I think one of the challenges that teachers face is, especially when you're spending all day in the classroom with a ton of teachers, and then you go home and you have a ton of homework to grade, you're just drained. You're socially drained. And I think a lot of the times it's hard for teachers to want to really sit down and interact with the kids. So this is almost another reason why it's important to do what you can to minimize the workload, so you have the capacity to sit and talk with students.
It's very true. And this is why I tell teachers, you need to minimize how much you grade. Grading does nothing for a child, right? Grading does nothing, because some of the children don't even spend effort on their homework assignments. So they might be turning something in that you don't even know how much effort they spent.
And then you spend twice as much effort than they did just grading it.
So you got to be wise in how are you really going to let this child or student know how well they're doing? It's not through grading homework. What it's going to be is on their tests. And if you want to help students learn what they should be mastering on their tests, well, you just focus on what's going to be on the test. And that's not going to be very much, because the test is only an hour's worth of information. And you only have maybe 4 tests in a year. So if you're only teaching what's on the test, I mean, that's like you need to get 4 hours of information in a child's mind. That's doable in a very short amount of time without grading any homework.
I think we'll have to make an episode. That's just, how do you minimize the workload as a teacher? That's a really good one.
Yes.
So what I wanted to focus on next is what I want to get your thoughts on. Is you've given these great ideas, minimize your time, spend a little bit of time with students. If you were to design a classroom or a school or an education system where mentoring is worked in and you don't have to go around the system, what would this look like?
So if I'm going to design something that I really want students to be mentored, in fact, the mentoring is the most important part. Because originally, education is supposed to help the children to learn. But people don't realize that when you're lecturing or teaching, the student isn't learning. You're shoving information into the child's mind. That's not learning. Learning is when a child figures out, hey, discovery of the world. Oh, this piece of information goes along with this, or the child actually is doing something when they learn. That's the only way to learn. When we look at the cycle of learning, and if we're not going to go about that in this podcast, but you can look it up on the website, the cycle of learning, in order to actually learn, you have to do something. It can't be taught in a classroom. Most schools are focused on the teaching, and that's why they don't have a lot of time. But if you're really going to try to help a child to learn and actually teach a child how to learn, you don't need any lecturing. In fact, all you need is to be there with the child. And as a child's trying to figure things out, you're there to kind of help them understand, oh, this is the process. Or when they have an issue, oh, this is what I would do. And then let the child go and do it. You know, the advice, giving advice to a child or a student takes very little time. But trying to shove information into their mind, that takes a lot of time. And so the most efficient way to do things is you be there, give them advice, and then let them go off and try to learn.
And you give them the resources to be able to learn sort of on their own.
So you need the resources there, and then you need the mentorship there.
Yeah.
And the mentor then, because they don't have to spend all their time lecturing and trying to shove information to a child's mind, grade their homework, do all these things. Now they just sit there and they watch, 25 students all trying to learn, and they can just go to each one and give advice and let them go off. Give advice, let them go off. Now you have a class built on the mentorship, helping the students develop. And you got the students that are actually going to learn because they're actually going out and doing something. They're actually trying to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, instead of just trying to listen and retain.
Have someone shove a lot of information to their mind.
Yeah, it's more descriptive. You can picture that.
Now, that's not to say that no children can't learn while they're being lectured to. It's just probably the top 10% of students are very good at learning even when they're being lectured to.
Yeah.
They can sit there and they can know what to do while they're being lectured to learn, right?
Yeah. Not only can they hear the information, but they can actually see how it applies.
Yes. And they can be doing problems. They can be writing down notes. They can be mapping things out while they're being lectured to because they know what to do. They know how to learn already.
Yeah.
But most students, they don't know how to learn. It's very difficult for them.
Well, we'll, for those of you who are listening, in our YouTube video in the description, we'll put in our show notes here some stuff about the cycle of learning and some stuff about really what this looks like in case you wanted to know more. But that's really great information. Now, so what some people may or may not know is that we're in the process of trying to start a school just like this. And the idea is that we focus more on mentoring. But one of the biggest, I think, pushbacks you hear from teachers is, how is this possible if you have a lot of students? Like, how can you actually spread this out?
So is that a question for me?
That's a question, yeah.
Dr. Jake, it's actually very tough in a traditional school setting. Mm-hmm. Because the only way you can make a mentoring model work and allow students to self-learn and to teach them how to learn on their own, how to quickly improve on their own, they need a lot of support. And so for the school we're trying to design, it's going to be like a 1 instructor to 5 student ratio, which in a normal school, that could never happen.
Not possible, yeah.
But the only reason we can make it happen is due to efficiencies we have, due to how we're structuring things, because we have our own flexibility to do that. We don't have to expend a lot of resources on what most schools expend their resources on. We're expending all of our resources on instructors and having qualified, really good mentors and teachers on site to be there. But we're not spending a lot of money on other frivolous things that most schools have. And we're not planning to make a profit like other schools are trying to make off of it. People don't realize for the same amount of a public school, same amount as most private schools require, much less than most private schools require, you can actually give this 1 to 5, 1 instructor per 5 student ratio very easily. It's just, you're not making a lot of profit off of it. Right? You're hiring people who are really qualified and you're paying them what they're worth. And that severely limits the profits on the school.
Well, I think that's really, I think that's really good to say, because I think something that's important is it would be great to have more of these schools where they focus on mentoring. But I think it's important to note that it's not realistic to think that every school can do this. There's not enough resources. So really, whether you're able to have a school environment like this, or whether you're just a teacher in a traditional environment, it's just whatever mentoring you can add into the classroom will always make a big difference, even if it's private, charter, public, what have you.
Oh, definitely. And it's the age-old idea. If a teacher affects even one student, and they really help one student, that one student's going to grow up and they're going to do something amazing. And so even if you just affect one student a year and you teach for 40 years, that's 40 people. As they grow up, they're going to have a huge impact on the world.
Yeah.
They're going to impact so many other people. I mean, you can't measure, right?
That's
you
a
can't
good
measure
point.
how much that's going to do.
That's a good point. Well, teachers, wherever you are, whatever school you're in, whatever challenges you have, take hope. If you can mentor one student a year, that's a big impact. Thank you, Dr. Jacob. Thank you for your time. It's a great episode, great content, and we'll put plenty of stuff in the show notes. And we'll see you all on next episode.